Alright, so in the last one, we got our interaction system working, but now we need to create something to interact with other than the character, and we also need to get rid of our manually turning on debug, and instead we are going to use a debug HUD to trigger that now. And just for if questions come up of why everything looks so terrible in that split screen view, there seems to be something going on with the sphere trace that is screwing up the lock aspect ratio cropping that's going on. So as you can see here, everything looks fine. So this won't actually impact our shipped game and is just a viewport bug when you're drawing the sphere trace, so no worries there. And now we'll hop into Jira, and you see we have two tasks, so very exciting. Interactions debug HUD and interactable actor. So copy down that description, put it as an engineering task under the interactions epic, and then we'll take a look at the interactable actor. It's the same thing, just copy down the description and engineering and interactions epic. So now we can throw both of these on our board, go to our board, and put them into in progress, and we can get right into it. And we find ourselves in the engine, and we need to turn off our manual debugging so we can prove that our debug HUD is actually doing something. So just close off those is debug mode enabled, and we should be all set. So I'm trying to find it, I can't, there's seeker, and disable that, compile save. And now we can play, and I'll show you that debug is off, just to prove that it's actually working the way I say it is. And now we're going to go and create our debug HUD. So CCS core, debug HUDs, and we're going to make one from the CCS debug HUD, and just call it debug HUD interaction CCS. And we'll create the class, and I'll skip ahead until it's all done. And now we need to make our interactable actor. And this is just going to be a CCS class because we want other interactable actors to be inheriting from this one. It just will make things very confusing if we have an HSS version of this. But anyways, I'll create the class, and I'll skip ahead until it's done. And we now find ourselves inside of C++, and the first thing we need to do is change up our begin play in the character. So as you can see, we're just now saying to enable the interaction seeker for test, because that's the channel we're going to be using while we're testing, just temporarily. And notice that we're getting rid of the receiver on the character. So note that that's still there because we're going to need it eventually. But for now, we're not going to use it. So it's just going to be sitting there dormant, not responding to anything. Now we're in the interface.h. And as promised, I'm going to delete that inadvertent comment from a couple of times ago. So just say it will be universally used for our interaction system because we are going to be casting to the component, not just using the interface to contact things directly. And now we're in the receiver component.h, and we need to add a friend declaration for our debug HUD. And this is just the same thing we did with the other debug HUDs. We want it to be able to access the private and protected variables and functions of this class. Then we'll head over to the receiver.cpp, and we can get rid of that include for the character because we're not going to be needing it anymore. The reason being is we're going to get rid of that halfway solution we had earlier. And now we're going to scroll down to the receive interaction, and as you can see, it's now freaking out. But we can get rid of that locally controlled check and the character part as well. And we just want to be printing the message because we don't need that character check. We're going to fix it in the next one where we look into replication of the interaction system. But for now, we're just going to see a whole bunch of print messages, and that'll be okay. We then need to fix up our enable debug mode function to basically not process the input over and over again. That's what we're doing here. So we're basically checking to see if it's visible before setting the visibility. Same thing with hidden in game. And then we're checking if the debug mode is not enabled and enabling it if it is. And then we're just going to do the exact opposite in the disable debug mode. So very straightforward stuff. We'll then hop over to the seeker.h and do the same thing, just add a friend declaration for the debug HUD. Very straightforward. And in the .cpp of the seeker, we again need to basically just check to make sure the variables are already not set to the values we want to set them to. And again, we'll just do the exact opposite in the disable debug function. And then we're all set there as well. And now we can get into our new classes. So starting with the debug HUD.h. And just a standard description there, nothing too interesting. Just this is gonna be used to enable debug information. And then we have our draw HUD function, which essentially acts as tick for the debug HUDs, if you remember from the other ones we made. Oh god, quite a few lectures ago at this point. Then we'll move over to the .cpp, and we'll paste in all the code, scroll up to the top. So make sure you have those three includes, or else you'll get an error. So first we want to call the parents version, then we need to get all the actors in the world and loop over them. And note that this is typically something you wouldn't want to do because it's very inefficient. But just because this is debugging and it's not actually going to go into the shipped game, it's okay. So then we loop over all the actors and we check if the actor has an interaction receiver component. And if it does, we call the enable debug mode function. And then we do the same thing for actors that have a seeker component. We'll then slide over to the interactable actor and paste in all our code. So first we need to forward declare the receiver comp, and then we'll write in a standard description, just basically saying that this is going to be the base for all interactable actors. And we'll swap in hide, seek, survive for creators. And at about this moment, I realized that I forgot to do that for the last one, so we'll go fix that now. Alright, so now that's looking much better. And we'll go back to our interactable actor.h. And here we just have the constructor and tick. So tick isn't doing anything per usual. And our interactable actor constructor is just disabling tick and creating our components and initializing them. Pretty standard stuff. We'll then move down a bit to begin play. And all it's doing for now is calling our parents function. And then we have our receiver component that we declared down there. And I'll make a little bit more room for us. But yeah, nothing too complicated here. And then we have some interaction settings down here. So we have the keys that are going to be set for this actor. And we have the box extent. And the reason we want both of these to be in here is it'll be a lot cleaner if you can edit these directly in the actor as opposed to having to go down to the receiver component to edit them. So now we'll move over to the .cpp and we'll paste in all our code. So make sure you have the include for the receiver. And as you can see in the constructor, all we're doing is disabling tick and creating that component and then setting it as root as well. And then tick, we're just calling the parents version. And then in begin play, we are calling the parents version. We then need to update the box extent to make sure that it's actually what our variable is set as. Then we need to loop through the keys and add them to the receiver component one by one. And at this point, we're all done with the C++ changes. So I'll build and skip ahead until it's done and I'm back in the editor. And we'll hop right into the Interactable Actors folder that I just created. And we're going to make a blueprint version of our interactable actor. So just like that, BP underscore interactable actor CCS. And we can click right into there and take a look. And we're going to want to update this key to include the test key so it'll actually work. And so we can actually see the interactable actor, we're going to give it a cube component just so we can visually see it. So compile, save. And then we can close out of that and we can drop one into the level just like that. And then we want to put it into the interactable actors folder that I have in the outliner. So we'll save and it'll check it out. And then we can move that into the folder. So looking good. Now we're going to go over to the game mode. So under game framework. And we're going to get rid of the animation debug HUD and instead put in our interaction debug HUD. Okay, and now we can press play. And again, ignore how terrible the screen actually looks because we're seeing that viewport bug. But as you can see, the interaction system is working. Even though we have disabled debug, we can see debugging because of the debug HUD that we added. So we're all looking good and we're ready to speedrun the review process. And as always, we'll start by packaging it up. And I put it in the wrong folder last time, apparently. No big deal. We can just delete the Windows folder and start anew. So get that out of the way. Select folder, and I'll skip ahead till it's done. So the build succeeded, and now we'll hop into it. And as you can see, everything is looking as we'd expect it to. And our print statement is working as well. So now we'll hop into Perforce and take a quick look at our change set. And we'll send it on its way. Then we'll start moving the tasks on the board into review and then to done. And we'll add our little comments here. So as always, thank you so much for watching. I know these last few have been a little bit C++ intensive, but thanks for sticking with it. And I'll see you in the next one. Later.